Welcome to Lawyers Who Care, the video podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. On each episode, we will meet a new lawyer and they will share stories of when they went above and beyond legal counsel for the benefit of their client. My name is Andrew Samalin. I'm the principal of Samalin Wealth, a nationally recognized wealth management firm for lawyers, law firms, and their clients. So let's applaud lawyers who care and learn from them. Today, my guest is Terrence Franklin from Sacks Glazier Franklin Lodise in Los Angeles, California, where they specialize in trust and estate litigation. Welcome, Terrence.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here, Andrew.
So glad you're here. So, Terrence, how did you come to your profession?
Well, as a young person, I always thought that I wanted to do something that might benefit the world. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, I didn't have a lot of particular role models for going into law, but I knew about people like Thurgood Marshall and thought, I'd like to be a lawyer someday. And at least that was a goal, and I didn't really have a particular mission about it. And so I just sort of set my sights on trying to achieve that at some point.
And how did you come to your specialty?
Well, I'd been doing general litigation in a large law firm for a couple of years when someone who was leaving that firm to start a new practice of trust and estate litigation, which was really sort of cutting edge in the early 90s, late 80s. I was excited about that because I'd been a litigator, but I hadn't ever thought about doing trust and estates. But this was an interesting practice area with individual clients who often had special needs and considerations. And I liked the idea of being able to specialize in a particular new area. It was interesting because I'd been doing it for about a quarter of a century before I really figured out what my mission was.
And by the way, what took you from Chicago to LA?
Interesting. Well, after I finished Harvard Law School, I'd met in law school a woman who I ended up getting married to, and we were together for a number of years, but she was from Los Angeles and I was from Chicago, and we ended up choosing to come to Los Angeles, where we raised our two kids together. And we're no longer together, but we share parenting responsibilities, and now I live my life here in Los Angeles with my husband, Jeffrey.
Wonderful. And so there is a story that you had that you went above and beyond a typical legal counsel. Do you care to share that with us?
Well, sure. As I mentioned, I've been doing trust and estate litigation, handling will contests and family disputes and such for about 25 years, when I realized that I had this family mission, because I discovered that there was actually a will contest in my own family in 1846. My four-time great-grandfather, John Sutton, was a white farmer in Florida. He owned my fourth great-grandmother, Lucy, whom he described in his last will and testament as his mulatto slave, Lucy, aged about 45. Well, the will went on to emancipate Lucy and her 8 children and her 6 grandchildren, and the will suggested that they should find their way to Illinois or Ohio or Indiana, someplace where they could enjoy their freedom. And once I discovered that, I began to dig into it further and further. And eventually I was able to uncover the fact that John's brother, Shadrach, challenged the will and tried to keep the family in slavery. So even though I'd been doing will contests for 25 years, I had no idea that this was a part of my own family heritage. And so after discovering that, it's really become a mission for me to try to figure out ways to bend the arc of history towards justice by uncovering opportunities to change the world, to make it better. I look at my ancestors having done something that was anti-racist, taking a step to push against the laws of their time. And so I try to find ways to bend that arc of history towards justice in my everyday practice.
And what did you use for research?
It was kind of a fascinating process. The reason why I even started pursuing this was because I had a great aunt who was turning 100, and I wanted to do something special to commemorate her birthday. And I realized that I'd gone to a family reunion some years before, and in those reunion materials, there'd been this little tiny excerpt of a will that someone in my family had done some research on and had typed up in a cursive font because they wanted to suggest that it was handwritten. And once I dug back into those original materials, I started calling lawyers in Jacksonville, Florida, which is where the family was from. I'm a fellow in the American College of Trust and Estate Counsel, which I'm fortunate that that gave me an opportunity to have access to a directory of lawyers across the country who do what I do. I called a couple of lawyers and I found out that there'd been this great fire of Jacksonville of 1901 that had destroyed virtually all the records of Jacksonville. And so I was disappointed to think that I probably would never be able to track down these documents. But there was a paralegal who I explained how significant this great aunt had been to our family, how she'd been a matriarch in our family, how she'd walked 4 miles each way to get her college degree, which was unusual for a Black woman in the early part of this century. She'd been married to a Tuskegee Airman, and I think when that paralegal heard that story, she thought, maybe I want to help this person. So she told me that, yes, there was the fire, but maybe she could find something. And she sent me an email that said, I found a John Sutton file. I don't know if it's the right one, but we should have the original file by Friday. And this was the week before I was going back to Illinois to celebrate my great aunt's 100th birthday. And that Friday when I got to work, there was an email from her saying, it's the right John, we have the right file. And across the internet, she sent me these images of this document that was sealed with red wax back in the old days before they had lick 'em stick 'em envelopes. And this 2-page document that was handwritten by a lawyer named Gregory Yale and marked at the end with an X by my great-great-great-grandfather that set us free. After that, I got excited about the idea of trying to understand what was the nature of this relationship that existed between these two people. We knew there was no consent because Lucy was owned by John, but I wondered if maybe somehow she'd used whatever agency she had to convince John to first move from Georgia to Florida, where she thought they could be emancipated, and then to encourage him to actually get the will done to make sure that the family would be safe once John passed away. And eventually I was able to go travel to Florida and see the will with my own eyes and to touch that spot where my ancestor made his mark to set us free. And eventually I was able to obtain these original 43 pages of documents that constitute that original will contest file. So it's been quite a journey of exploration and coming to understand and to try to put myself in the position of people in the 1800s to see the oppression that they lived under, and then try to bring that same level of compassion to the present and encourage other people to do the same, to try to push against racism and oppression in our lives.
I don't quite know how to follow up after that extraordinary story, so I'll save us both the embarrassment of trying to do so. How has your I was going to say how has your practice changed, but how has your life changed?
Well,
after
it's been
doing that research.
quite a transformation. I certainly have the opportunity to. I've been able to travel around the country and with Zoom to and other methods of video discussion to share this story across the country and try to give other people the inspiration to look into their own lives and see where they can find opportunities to make life better for themselves, for their clients, for others. And really to talk about the fact that we as trust and estates lawyers stand in a unique place um, between the past and the future to try to understand what it is that brought people to where they are, and then try to put into words that may have implications into the next century what it is that was most important to them, what demonstrates value. So in my practice, I'm able to use those discussions about how we can try and do better to try to push this forward and to, as I said, discover and employ my mission to bend the arc of history towards justice. It's been quite a revelation, and I'm working on some creative projects outside of the practice of law that I'm hoping someday will give a chance to share this message and this story even more widely. I'm working on a limited series for television project. I'm working on a novel, and we're actually doing a collaboration with the Oakland Symphony Chorus on a musical aspect of this Lucy Sutton story.
It's truly a fascinating story. How do people get in touch with you, Terrence? Both not only for your practice, but for other related and semi-related topics. How do they a phone number perhaps that you can give twice, a web address that you can give twice?
Sure. My telephone number is 213-617-7266. Again, 213-617-7266. Our firm's website is www.trustlitigation.la. Again, that's www.trustlitigation.la. I'm also, my creative projects are available on, or you can follow me on Instagram at Terry Franklin LA, Terry Franklin LA. I'm also on Twitter at Terry Franklin, and generally available here in Los Angeles.
Well, Terrence, thank you so much for joining today. Again, my guest has been Terrence Franklin from Sacks Glazier Franklin and Lodise in Los Angeles, California, where they specialize in trust and estate litigation. Terrence, thank you again for the time today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the opportunity.